Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Kishore Kishori ki jai, Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharani ki jai, Gonitai ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Good morning. We're reading from Canto 11, Chapter 7, and the text is 52. Nati sneha prashango va kartavya kvapi kenachit kurvan vindeta santapam kapota iva dinadi Nati sneha prashango va kartavya kvapi kenachit kurvam vindeta santapam kapota iva dinadi Nati sneha prashango va kartavya kvapi kenachit kurvan vindeta shantapam kapota iva dinadi. Please chant. Nati sneha prashango va kartavya kvapi kenachit kurvam vindeta santapam kapota iva dinadi. Nati sneha prashango va kartavya kvapi kenachit kurvam vindeta shantapam kapota iva dinadi. Nati sneha prashango va kartavya kvapi kenachit kurvan vindeta santapam kapota iva dinadi. It's a very nicely composed verse. Na, not. Ati sneha, excess affection. Prashanga, close association. Va, or. Kartavya, one should manifest. Kva api, ever. Kenachit, with anyone or anything. Kurvan, so doing. Vindeta, one will experience. Santapam, great distress. Kapota, the pigeon. Eva, just as. Dinadi, cripple-minded. And the translation of this verse, as is the purport, is by the disciples of Srila Prabhupada. One should never indulge in excessive affection or concern for anyone or anything. Otherwise, one will have to experience great suffering, just like the foolish pigeon. And the purport. The Sanskrit prefix ati, or excessive, indicates affection or attachment in which there is no Krishna consciousness. Lord Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 5:29, Suridam sarva bhutanam, The Lord is the eternal well-wisher of every living being. The Lord is so affectionate that he sits in the heart of every conditioned soul and accompanies him throughout his endless wanderings in the kingdom of Maya, patiently waiting for the conditioned soul to come back home, back to Godhead. Thus, the Lord makes all arrangements for the eternal happiness of every living entity. The best way for anyone to show compassion and affection for all living beings is to become a preacher on behalf of Lord Krishna and assist the Lord in reclaiming the fallen souls. If our affection or attachment for others is based on bodily sense gratification in the name of society, friendship, and love, that excessive unwanted affection, ati sneha, will cause burning pain at the time of the breaking or destruction of the relationship. Now the story of the foolish pigeon will be narrated. A similar story is described in the 7th canto, 2nd chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, told by Yamaraj to the mourning widows of King Suyagna. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shlakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Shah Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragutam Vitam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakha Vitam Shah. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagat Pate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapsa Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyas Cha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnebhyo Namo Namaha. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Shrimata Ramapada Swami Iti Namine. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Shrimata Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So I'll read the translation once again for this text 52. One should never indulge in excessive affection or concern for anyone or anything. Otherwise, one will have to experience great suffering, just like the foolish pigeon. So here the mendicant Brahmana is speaking to King Yadu, and he states, and these were the words from Srila Vishwanath commenting on this verse, he learns from the pigeon. So indulging in excessive affection or concern for someone will cause one to experience great suffering. That's the point that this mendicant Brahmin is making to King Yadu. And Srila Vishwanath, he translates one of the words in the text that we read, prashanga, close association, as being broken down into, and he gives the word that it's like even physical association, fondling, etc. So there's an interesting statement made by Lord Krishna regarding King Yadu and the effect upon him of hearing the words of the Avadhuta Brahmana. So this is much later on, when the Avadhuta Brahmana has gone through his various explanations of how he's looked at the creation of Lord Krishna and how he's actually learned various things from observing the creation. So this is what Lord Krishna comments when this Avadhuta Brahmana has finished talking. O Uddhava, hearing the words of the Avaduta, the saintly King Yadu, who is the forefather of our own ancestors, became free from all material attachment, and thus his mind was evenly fixed on the spiritual platform. So that summarizes what the effect came to be on King Yadu. He actually lost all material attachment, and his mind became very firmly fixed on the spiritual platform. So that's in the 9th chapter of the same canto. We'll eventually come to it. So this learning and enlightenment on the part of King Yadu was made possible by the teaching of the Avaduta Brahmana, who taught the king to fix his consciousness on the spiritual platform of detachment. So that's the contrast. It's actually fixing the consciousness on the spiritual platform of detachment through simply observing the creation of Lord Krishna. So this platform of spiritual consciousness or detachment, there's a description of it, what that consciousness looks like, by Lord Krishna. And this is how he describes it in Bhagavad Gita in the 5th chapter. A person in full consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the Supreme Lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material miseries. So that's what it looks like, the consciousness of somebody who's focused on the Supreme Lord, having carried, there's an understanding that's being carried in that consciousness, an understanding of Lord Krishna being the Lord of every living entity. And he's the benefactor, the well-wisher of every living entity. So the conflicting position is for a person to be, and these are words that you find Srila Prabhupada using, under the spell of illusion, trying to be the Lord of all that one surveys. So you can see how it's the completely contrasting position. The one position where one's fixed in spiritual consciousness, one's understanding the Lord to be the master of the whole creation, and the conflicting position where one's working under the spell of illusion, as Srila Prabhupada's nice words, one tries to be the Lord oneself of all that one surveys. And Srila Prabhupada states it this way: the Lord is the master of material nature, and the conditioned souls are under the stringent laws of material nature. So you see the different position. So it is essential to understand this fact that the Lord is the master of material nature, and the conditioned souls are under the laws, the stringent laws of material nature. If we don't understand this fact, it's not possible to achieve peace in this world, either individually or collectively. This is how Srila Prabhupada has taught. So the reason this is so is that a person can achieve peace if there's this understanding of Lord Krishna's supremacy. This understanding allows one to act accordingly, because naturally what you're understanding will cause you then to act in a particular way. So should one be in the conflicting position of being under the laws of material nature, then as opposed to acting according to the one position where you're acting under the understanding that Lord Krishna is the master, one is actually going to have a sense of uncertainty about the future. So that's actually the different effects of which position one's in. So this uncertainty, if one's in this position where one's under the laws of material nature, there's this uncertainty is a fear, because one is not sure how the person or things one is attached to may be threatened in the future. So how to deal with this? if one is in that position, where one's just under the laws of material nature. So a heroic leader, for instance, may try to transcend this petty attachment by force of will, while an introspective yogi, he may pursue knowledge for the same purpose. So there's an understanding that one has to go past the attachment if one's a heroic leader or if one's a yogi who's pursuing knowledge. But Lord Krishna's illusory energy, Maya, is much stronger than any conditioned soul. So Sri Vasudev, in a different section of the Bhagavatam, he reflects on this point on the occasion of a solar eclipse at Kurukshetra. This point that Lord Krishna's illusory energy, Maya, is so much stronger than any conditioned soul. So he's speaking, this is Vasudev. My dear brother, God himself has tied the knot called affection, which tightly binds human beings together. It seems to me that even great heroes and mystics find it very difficult to free themselves from it. So that's from the 10th canto, the 84th chapter. So taking the position of understanding Lord Krishna's supremacy, and so taking shelter of Krishna, the Lord of Maya, is the only way of becoming immune to the influence of Maya. So there's another reflection by Lord Yamaraj on this point of attachment of human beings to one another, because we're looking at how Krishna has created this bond of affection, but this is how it plays itself out. So there were queens lamenting for the dead body of their husband, the king, and they expressed their lamentation as follows. So these are queens having been very affectionate or had this bond of affection with their husband. So the queens say this: "O king, you were a very grateful husband and the most sincere friend of all of us. How shall we exist without you? O hero, wherever you are going, please direct us there so that we may follow in your footsteps and engage again in your service. Let us go along with you." So this wanting to not be separated, but the separation has come. So that's the 7th canto, 2nd chapter. So their cries were heard even from the abode of Yamaraj. So Yamaraj, he assumed the body of a boy, and he came and he addressed the queens, highlighting this attachment of human beings to one another. So he says, "Alas, how amazing it is. These persons who are older than me," because he's assumed the body of a young boy, "have full experience that hundreds and thousands of living entities have taken birth and died. Thus, they should understand that they also are to die, yet still they are bewildered. The conditioned soul comes from an unknown place and returns after death to that same unknown place. There is no exception to this rule, which is conducted by material nature. Knowing this, why do they uselessly lament?" So that's Yamaraj looking at this point of attachment, this bond of affection that binds human beings. So, and then of course, depending on the position one's taken, either having seen Lord Krishna as one's master or just been under the laws of material nature, one's actually going to deal with that breaking of that bond in a very different way. So these words of Lord Yamaraj allow for the deeper understanding that questions attachment even to a dead body. Because the queens kept the body on their laps. They wouldn't allow the body even to be cremated. They held onto that body past the cremation time. So that deeper understanding of the ephemeral nature of the body echoes Lord Krishna's statement, and this is Lord Krishna in second chapter of Bhagavad Gita. O mighty armed one, even if you think that the soul is always born and always dies, you still have no reason to lament. So even if one were an unbeliever in the existence of the soul, still one would not have a cause to lament. So that's Lord Krishna. The explanation is that the material elements remain unmanifest, so they aren't apparent to the senses before creation, and from this state of unmanifestation, not being visible to the senses, they become manifest, they become evident to the senses. So Srila Prabhupada notes that there's a law of conservation of energy, and that law is still operating, and it's always there. But in course of time, things become unmanifest. You can't see them by your senses. Or they manifest. You see them with your senses. So even in an unmanifest stage, things are not lost. That's the point. So that's a reason for not lamenting. So the example that Srila Prabhupada gives is that there may be a skyscraper that's demolished or dismantled, so it becomes unmanifest. You can't perceive it any longer with your senses, but it remains as atoms. So interestingly, recently there was an interview of the president of this country. He was announcing a short while back that all the nuclear facilities in Iran had actually been completely annihilated, so demolished. And recently, because the United States has bombed Iran, he was being asked, but if these nuclear facilities were annihilated, why is there bombing going on? Why is there still a threat? So his response was interesting because it's very much in line with this argument of Srila Prabhupada that something may be unmanifested, but still there's that law of conservation of energy. So the president's response was this. He said, oh, but they can actually take shovels. Means that they can start digging up some remnants and resurrecting things. So it's actually in line with the idea that there's a conservation of energy, that's a law that's operating. So something you may not be visible, it may be, some remnants may be buried, but you can resurrect it. So one may hold the view that material bodies are perishable. As Lord Krishna states, the material body of the indestructible, immeasurable, and eternal living entity is sure to come to an end. So you see the contrast. Immeasurable, indestructible, eternal. But the body is sure to come to an end. And therefore, he's telling Arjuna he has to fight. So that's Bhagavad Gita 2:18. Then one can remember that the body is like a dress. So why lament for the change of dress? So this serves as an encouragement, just knowing that the body is like a dress for self-realization. So on the basis of the non-endurance of the body, we can actually be inspired to actually focus on the actual self. So we've used the criterion of the endurance or non-endurance of the body to compare two different positions. So attachment to another body versus being detached from another body. Because we looked at this point of how attachment plays itself out, because the whole verse is about being over affectionate to someone or something. So if one takes the position of understanding Lord Krishna's supremacy, then that understanding of Lord Krishna being the controller brings a state of fearlessness. So here's the different position. The other one is quite different. There's that sort of anxiety, feeling of threat and fear. But if one takes a position of understanding Lord Krishna's supremacy, then that understanding of Lord Krishna has been the controller, brings a state of fearlessness and a concomitant detachment. So very interesting, quite a different internal shift takes place. A second aspect of taking this position of understanding Lord Krishna's supremacy means that one is not threatened by any material situation. You're already in a fearless position because one's only concern is with the service to Lord Krishna in devotion. So this is in contrast to one in material illusion who's fearful due to illusion. So it's quite a different position. On the illusory idea of happiness, that's the other position. There's an illusory idea of happiness. So if we look at this illusory idea of happiness, there's a listing of 6 things that are believed to bring happiness in the material world, and these are them. This is from the Hitopadesha. Pleasure comes from 6 things: wealth, good health, a beautiful wife, a wife who speaks sweetly, an obedient son, and knowledge. So those are the 6 things that bring happiness if one were merely on in the position of having an illusory idea of happiness. So I'm going to illustrate from Karl Marx, who expresses the indulgence in excessive affection for money, because wealth is considered one of those things that somebody will look to if one's in that, taking that position of illusory ideas of happiness. So here's Karl Marx. It's so fascinating, I found. So this is him talking. That which exists for me through the medium of money, that for which I can pay, which money can buy, that I am the possessor of the money. My own money is as great as the power of money. The properties of money are my own, the possessor. What aim and I can do is therefore not at all determined by my individuality. I am ugly, but I can buy the most beautiful woman for myself. Consequently, I'm not ugly, for the effect of ugliness, its power to repel, is annulled by money. As an individual, I am lame, but money provides me with 24 legs. Therefore, I am not lame. Money is the highest good, and so its possessor is good. Besides, money saves me the trouble of being dishonest. Therefore, I am presumed honest. I am stupid, but since money is the real mind of all things, how could its possessor be stupid? So extraordinary, isn't it, that this illusory idea of happiness in the form of money, Karl Marx actually translates it into even the power it gives one to overcome physical limitation, ugliness, stupidity, how other people perceive one. I mean, he's acknowledging what he is, but he understands that money changes everything. So, but he's actually even calling it, money is the highest good. So this is when one's holding that, is taking that position of being under the laws of material nature, where one just looks to illusory happiness. So in Karl Marx's case, money is the highest good. Now, in terms of world peace, because that was the point that Srila Prabhupada brought up, that collectively and individually it's not possible for there to be peace unless one has taken that position of viewing Lord Krishna as having a supreme position. So the criterion that can be used is being able to recognize the real center of existence. So that's what Srila Prabhupada points out. So recognizing Lord Krishna in this way as the center of existence allows for a sense of brotherhood of all people. So that's the effect on the consciousness. There's a sense that everyone is interconnected, brotherhood. So a person holding the position of enjoyment, on the other hand, under Maya, will fight with others over things to enjoy. So right now, we have this problem going on where it's quite extreme. You know, countries actually bombing other countries because they want their oil, or they don't want another country to have a nuclear weapon. So those holding the position of enjoyment under Maya, they fight with others over things to enjoy. So the person holding the position of recognizing the center of all existence, or there being a center for all existence, will know that Krishna is the only real enjoyer. So you see, the different consciousness comes about. The understanding is different. So this is the description Lord Krishna gives of himself in a neutral position. O Dhananjaya, so it's Bhagavad Gita 9:9, all this work cannot bind me. I'm ever detached from all these material activities, seated as though neutral. So there's Lord Krishna describing his position. So although he has control over every minute detail of material activity, he's sitting as if neutral. And the reason for this is that he's situated in a position transcendental to the dualities of material life. You know, I'm happy or I'm unhappy, that constant dual position that a person is forced into if they're holding no concept of a central supreme controller, but rather they're just under the control of material nature. So the person recognizing the supreme position of Lord Krishna, he meets another criterion that divides him from the person in material illusion. So that person holding this concept of there being the supreme position of Lord Krishna, he doesn't divide people into friends and enemies. So the person in the Krishna conscious position, he understands that Krishna is the friend of all living entities. Whereas the person in material illusion, he does indeed divide people into friends and enemies. And Lord Krishna explains, I'm the goal, the refuge, and the most dear friend. I am the creation and the annihilation, the basis of everything, the resting place and the eternal seed, the Bhagavad Gita 9:18. And Srila Prabhupada explains, everything is resting on Krishna's energy. Therefore, without Krishna's shelter, nothing can exist. Krishna is the supreme ruler because everything belongs to him and everything exists on his energy. So the countries or planets upon which we live are also Krishna. So we should take shelter of Krishna. And Srila Prabhupada advises that one does this either for protection or for an annihilation of distress. So that was an examination of what thoughts extended from this verse of talking where the mendicant Brahmana is talking about suffering coming about due to over affection for someone or something. So if there's something to expand the discussion, please feel free.
When we hear instructions of detachment, proper detachment, and sometimes is these very high ideals that are being expressed that are not necessarily sort of applicable in one sense. It's not, something that I may feel that, yes, I can follow this instruction. Or rather, the question is, how can I follow that instructions? How can I be situated in that position? I may sort of conceptually, acknowledge it, but when it comes to the application, I can find myself. If it comes to the application, then you find yourself I'm not there. It's not something that is part of my level. And it reminds me also back to, again, Krishna telling Arjuna that renunciation is not the path for him. Working in devotion is the path for him. Or karma sannyas specifically was what Krishna was telling Arjuna. It's not for you. Rather working in devotion. So this principle, it seems here that in this level that is being discussed, detachment would lead to proper position yourself in Krishna consciousness. Or you have to be in that level of detachment to be able to overcome the influence of the material nature. And then we also hear the other, at least in my limited understanding, this is how I'm, processing the instructions. In the first canto, second chapter, Sutta Goswami explains, that by devotional service, then vairagya and vidya, or it becomes manifested gradually. It becomes, there. So you have the process of bhakti. And by the process of bhakti, then we start to see the changes that happen, that knowledge start to manifest, and automatically also detachment start to manifest. So it seems, what I'm trying to sort of process of the verse and also the class and trying to see how it applies to myself is that, yes, there's again this level that is where we should be, perfectly detached from this material world and attached to Krishna. And then also the level that works, that is tailored for me, which is the practice of devotional service, by which the cultivation of detachment and knowledge is in place and is gradually being manifested to that position of perfect detachment. If you want to comment on that.
Yes, so what I'm understanding from how you were looking at things is it would appear that in one sense you're questioning that one can be detached. It's not like absolutely applicable, and pointing out that the applying the process of bhakti allows for gradual detachment and knowledge to develop. So indeed, the whole emphasis and thrust of the class was to point out that simply having an understanding that, or accepting that Krishna is the controller of everything, carrying that kind of understanding brings about certain changes and understandings internally. So I was highlighting those that are very, very prominent, becoming fearless, not actually feeling a sense of threat about what's going to happen to persons or things one's attached to. So indeed, detachment is possible through continually performing service to Lord Krishna, carrying the understanding that he's actually one's well-wisher, carrying the understanding that he's actually controlling and arranging everything. So it's not that one begins with detachment, certainly not. But it's the change in the internal understanding that is what's growing and developing and moving one on a path of self-realization. And it's very significant. I mean, to not actually be walking around feeling fearful about the possible impending change in a relationship that one has, like that possibly somebody no longer being there, is quite a huge internal, what would one say, an internal kind of liberation, because the general person is actually constantly walking around, if they're under the laws of material nature, with a sense of being threatened. So to actually have safety and a sense of, because of carrying the proper understanding of Krishna, being in his position, to actually be walking around with a sense of safety and security is part of, it sort of synchronizes with a sense of detachment from whatever one is attached to, because there's that sense of security and safety. So that's how I'm processing something on this point of detachment. It's only possible when there's a sense of safety and security, which comes from nurturing that understanding that Krishna is controlling and caring and wishing one well. So
just want to thank you for your class, Mathaji. So many good points. Personally, I was going to share how, for me, one of the most powerful points, when Prabhupada says, if you give a monkey $1 million, everyone will follow him, line up to see him. If you give a monkey like $1 million, everybody will line up to see him, I remember Prabhupada saying, or hearing that. But the thing that helps me so much is the story of when Mother Yasoda caught Krishna eating the mud, and then when he opened his mouth, she could see everything was there. Everything is inside of the body of the Lord. So if we get Krishna, then we don't lose anything, because everything is there.
yeah, that's very nice, bringing up that reinforcement of being in that position where you are seeing Krishna as the controller of everything and owner of everything and arranger of everything, just by remembering Mother Yasoda looking into his mouth, and indeed seen that all the universes, planets, etc., where there's even seen herself looking into his mouth, in his mouth. Yeah, thank you.
Hare Krishna. I also have one question. Since here in this shloka, pigeon is called as a foolish pigeon. I was going through the story of the pigeon. It appeared to me they are a wonderful couple, having a nice family.
Come a little bit closer to me.
Okay. So the pigeon is being mentioned here as a foolish pigeon. But I went to the story of the pigeon is mentioned here. It appeared to me that the pigeon the couple was very wonderful, taking care of the family, taking care of the children, have wonderful loving affection for each other, as if just like a wonderful household couple. But the pigeon is called a foolish. The reason is that he said to be excessively attached to the family members. So just wish to know that kind of affection, can it be considered to be an excessive attachment? Because this affection is natural among the family members. One cannot stay by saying that I'm detached and can still take care of the family members. And here we see that when the she pigeon, I don't know what to say, the pigeon is a female, she got carried away when she saw that her own children were trapped into the net. So she very affectionately, because she was so much loving the children, she immediately dragged to take care of the children. But in that way, she also got trapped.
But what?
She also got trapped in that net. And it said that female pigeon was also foolish because she couldn't help the children there. But it is natural for a mother to run after the children if they are into difficulty. So how to understand the philosophy of this detachment versus the philosophy of affectionate dealing between the family members?
The question is, how do you actually understand this question of detachment? Because you've looked at the upcoming story of the pigeon, who's just in this verse is described as a foolish pigeon. We don't get any, because we're not doing the other verses, I do not focus on that. So you're wondering, how do you look at this idea of detachment when in actual fact, looking at the story, it would appear that it's very natural, the attachment amongst the different family members, be it the mother pigeon, the father pigeon, the children. So, yes. So again, it's the two positions. The one position is, one is under the illusory idea of happiness. So the illusory idea of happiness is one experiences affection for one's partner, so like the pigeon, mutually. There's a whole description of how they actually enjoyed each other's glances, they enjoyed the physical appearance of each other, they enjoyed the mind of each other. So there was a very strong attraction and bond. So that position is considered being under the laws of material nature. It's an illusory idea of happiness. The happiness lies in the connection with another entity where there's full appreciation, physically, mentally. And then, of course, they have their offspring, and they show equal affection and delight with the development of the wings of the young, the fact that the young are trying to chirp correctly. So they're getting delight. So that's all described as illusory happiness. It's a one position. The second position is where you're actually seeing a supreme controller, a loving supreme controller that one wants to connect with and serve. So the attention shifts. So there may be affection, there may be appreciation for one's partner, one's offspring, but there's new understanding that's developing internally, and that new understanding that's developing internally is that one's got this eternal connection with that supreme being, and it's a loving supreme being. So one is nurturing that through performing some service for the supreme being. And naturally, because one is raising one's consciousness beyond just the immediate, what could one say, the immediate reality, which, as you said, can be very natural, having affection, having loving exchanges with another being, one's partner. But because one has taken a second position of cultivating attachment to a supreme being, the consciousness is being raised. So one, in actual fact, is also looking at oneself a different way. One is understanding, oh, I am very affectionate to another human being, but I understand there may be a time when this other being, this being may actually come to a point of death, or I'm going to come to a point of death. The material body is going to die. So that relationship is going to end. So one can continue being affectionate, but there's a lot of reflection and a lot of, what's the word? Greater understanding of one's spiritual identity. Even though one is still performing all one's duties, one still is affectionate, one still is loving to one's partner, but one is elevating one's consciousness. One's not finding all one's happiness on that plane of existence. One's cultivating a higher plane of existence. So it does not mean that there is fault or that there's change, or that that one should not be affectionate. Rather, the change is happening internally, that there is a lot more self-examination, a lot more being able to step back and observe how one is functioning, observe what is the reality of the situation. If one does not take the second position of seeing there being a supreme being who's controlling everything, one is just seeing things on a very, what's the word, physical plane in one sense, very temporal plane. So the idea is to actually be cultivating consciousness of one's eternality, one's indestructibility, which is actually a greater happiness. It frees one from the fearfulness, because there's fearfulness too in that scenario that's been described. We begin to understand it when the laws of material nature start operating, where there's separation from each other. The children are separated from the parents. So then one sees how the attachment doesn't allow for proper thinking even, being able to assess the situation properly. So the mother bird is not thinking of the danger, the hunter must be close by if all the babies are in a net. They're there, the net is still there, the hunter must be close by. So let me think how I can actually possibly deal with this situation, taking into account there might be a hunter there. The father comes, she gets trapped in the net because she just rushes towards the net, not thinking the hunter's there. And of course the hunter traps her too. So foolish part is not having the sufficient space of reflection, which is only possible when one's cultivating higher consciousness. The father pigeon has the same problem. He also basically ends up giving up his life because he also doesn't have that. When one refers to detachment, it means that there's sufficient intelligence that one can detach oneself properly to be able to assess a situation correctly. So that's where the foolishness lies. And that intelligence is spiritual intelligence.
That's is a very nice answer. You can add that there's an element of duty that one has as a householder, as a parent. Naturally, you want to protect, and in that space in which you want to protect, there is fear too, and we see that in situations of associates of the Lord. For example, Uttara, she was fearful when she saw the Ashwatthama's weapon, the Brahmastra, coming at her to kill Parikshit. She was very afraid, and she came to the Lord pleading for protection. The difference, just as you mentioned, she was in the level of understanding who is the protector, who is the controller. So she took shelter of the Lord. But she was afraid. So fear is not unnatural, even in people that are on that. But the thing is that you take shelter of the Lord, and that's it. When you take shelter, the moment you take shelter, then you become fearless. Fearless. And then there is Arjuna, right after hearing the Bhagavad Gita and understanding perfectly his position. When the death of Abhimanyu happened, Arjuna lost it. In fact, the narration of the Mahabharata is that he made a decision, or he processed the whole thing and decided that he was going to kill this person, and if he fails, he will kill himself. Which was, Krishna saying, where is your mind? What are you thinking? You're putting at risk the whole endeavor just by that harsh decision. So, and that was out of the pain that he had, and the anger that he had because of the death of his son. So, I'm saying that these type of reactions, just as you say, they're natural. They're natural even in personalities that are on this other side that you were saying. The difference and I guess for us to think is that in all situations we have to always take shelter of the Lord. And then it comes a situation, what happens is the Lord, if my child dies or my partner dies, even though I'm trying to take shelter, then, if we did take shelter, we will feel at peace. But we do have to act. If I have my children, just like the pilgrim, or if I'm the mother of the children, and I see them, trapped, I have to do something. So what should I do? I take shelter of the Lord, but I have to do something. Just like Arjuna, I have to do something. And maybe not the best decision that I go straight into that net. But I have to be with those children, because I can see they're suffering, they're afraid, and if I have to die, I die. That's what I would think if I'm a parent. But that decision is considered to be foolish. So what is the foolish thing? I think the foolish thing is what you mentioned, that you don't take shelter of Krishna, you don't accept. That's the foolish position. It's not the act, but it's the position of not accepting Krishna as a controller.
Yes.
You pointed out. The act itself is natural. That's what I'm
Yes. Of course, adding to it, the intelligence is working differently. If one is taken, is not just under the laws of material nature and finding ephemeral happiness, but one's taken the position of being subservient to Lord Krishna and looking for his shelter, then actually the intelligence will be operating differently. There's more ability to take a step back and consider carefully what might be the right course of action. I mean, you brought up, and as Shibalaba did, the example of the pigeon who just rushed into the situation, no thought, immediately rushed, seeing the children trapped. Or you brought up another example of Uttara feeling great fear. So, and of course, the pigeon or Uttara, they represent taking different position, one being under the laws of material nature, the other having taken shelter of Krishna and directly taken shelter of Krishna in that dangerous situation. So the intelligence was still operating with Uttara. She's immediately taken shelter of Krishna, going to plead to him to please intervene. The pigeon was just at the mercy of the laws of material nature. The hunter was more powerful. The babies were going to be slaughtered. She was destined to try and save them, and naturally there's no way that she could actually pull them out of the net without actually really having thought about it very carefully. She just rushed into the situation, so she's immediately trapped even before she can do anything. So yeah, the intelligence is operating differently. There's that ability to take a step back and consider carefully and think, and indeed rely on that connection with the Lord Krishna, knowing that he will actually in some way protect one. So sometimes the knowledge protects one, just understanding that the body is ephemeral and it's destined to be demolished at one point in a lifetime. I mean, it's the law of nature. Just having, so it may be that the knowledge is what gives one strength, spiritual knowledge, or it may be that the strength comes from just turning to one's benefactor, one's shelter, and so deriving strength there and getting a more settled mind, and therefore being able to think more carefully what might be the best course of action, or turning to someone else that has the same sort of shelter for some advice. So the way of functioning changes. The way of functioning changes. So that's just adding to the thought. The intelligence operates